Thank you. This is a very hard acts to follow, but I'm thrilled to be here. I have one correction there. I am not a designer. I have had the pleasure of working with extraordinary designers over the past 30 years who were responsible for many icons of the country. But what I want to talk about today, and I just have to figure out how to get their slides. I do have some slides to show. Because I think the opportunity here, I'm speaking to everyone who's going to be here over the next 2 days, is to look forward, and I'm going to give you what in our business, every design project starts with a creative brief. And this will be brief, given the few minutes we have, but give you, and the role of a creative brief is to basically give the designer the context, the backstory of what the assignment is all about. So I wanted to give you all a little bit of backstory of how we got here from a visual sense. We all start with a proclamation in 1867. But at the time when Fathers of Confederation were doing their backroom deals and negotiations, there was very little sense of identity that came out of this. And we moved forward to World War I, where Canada was forging its own identity on at Vimy Ridge and at Passchendaele, but at the same time we had to live with borrowed icons. And even though we had 400 years or more of imagery around the maple leaf, which was distinctly ours, and our beloved beaver, at the same time, which speaks volumes about values and all, at the same time we had no iconography at all that we could legitimately call our own. And so we come to stage two, and it started actually in the late 50s. It was a fascinating time. I wasn't here then, but I am an immigrant to Canada. But it was a fascinating time because this was when there were legions of designers and thinkers from Europe, from all over, who were imports into the country, immigrants here who brought a whole new sensibility about thinking about what is a modern world all about. And at the same time, there were Canadians who were moving abroad, studying abroad, as we are wont to do, love to travel and bring back some of these new ideas. And this was a very heady time. And as you all know, or those of you who wear this with honor, the motto of the Order of Canada, which was, again, a centennial gift to the country, is they desire a better country. A very powerful, call to action. I just wonder if any of you, put up your hands, anybody know who this character is? A few of you do. One of our original madmen. This is 1959. This is Alan Fleming standing in front of what was at the time, a fantastic signature identity, the CN identity. Alan, I picked him because he was representative of, again, a host of incredibly talented Renaissance men. And they were all guys at the time. That will change, has changed, and will change. But these were people who were at the birth of the modern graphic design movement. And this was, at the time, graphic design, like the group of 7 who were practiced, that's how their day jobs, they were basically printing, it was a printing graphic arts. And Alan Fleming was a world-leading thinker in a new movement in terms of modernism and communications and typography. But what he argued for was a design style that took the best of this international modernism, but without, in a very Canadian way, overshadowing the humanism and humor that he saw as being particularly Canadian traits. That ability to find inspiration from international sources, but bring it home and bring a distinctly Canadian value to that is very powerful. So as as everybody here is thinking about moving forward to 2017, you're standing on the shoulders of giants, even if you don't know all their names. Paul Arthur, Jim Donahue, a number of the list goes on and on. I couldn't possibly do justice to that. But what they all shared in common was this idea of Canada, and a Canada of ideas that meant something to this generation in terms of being able to now to patriate icons and symbols of what we stand for. And they actually felt and were passionate about this idea of shaping our culture through this kind of work. And they brought that, was able to bring that to bear on a number of projects. Now, you all, I'm sure all recognize this. This was the alt version of the flag that Lester Pearson was a strong promoter of, advocate of. And you know, we know why he was such a strong advocate of why Canada needed its own iconography because of the Suez crisis and all. He had all the right ideas, sea to sea, you know, the maple leaf and all that. But luckily, smarter design mavens prevailed. I can't imagine trying to, you know, do that, you know, paint that on your forehead during the game. But this was the kind of you know, the elegance and simplicity and purity of the kind of modernism that came forward in the flag that we now can look at 45 years and think it looks as fresh today as it did, you know, 45 years ago. And not sure. And I love this little anecdote that it was also tested in wind tunnels to make sure that it, you know, that maple leaf looked really good when it was flapping against a blue sky. But the important thing to remember is this was not easy. This didn't just happen. These people actually fought hard and long to make this happen. And to me, as I was doing some of this research, this was, I thought, a fascinating juxtaposition. So we have Stuart Ash's identity, I'm pointing at the right thing, identity for the centennial mark, and then we have somebody else obviously designed the little brochure talking about the centennial mark. Very different ideas, and one looking backwards, one looking forward. That's the challenge, and this was happened over and over again. I also think it's important to recognize, and Grant Johnson's in the audience here, there were unsung heroes in many respects through what we take for granted now is our federal identity program. This was one of, you know, pre-1970, there were 125 different icons of state that were out there. I think the Transport Canada one's particularly funky looking. But it's very retro. It's kind of cool factor now. But there was a prevailing understanding that the role of in terms of language access, in terms of supporting, you know, that citizens needed to understand what their government was doing, and they needed clear clear signs of where the government was and wasn't, what they were doing, and that was an important civic duty. And so out of that came an amazing program that is still renowned around the world in terms of its scope. You know, 20,000 facilities, 1,800 vehicles, 150 institutions, 2 official languages, all coming together under the longest running program of its type anywhere. And people, I mean, we've talked to Alan Way and some of the people who were there originally, people came from around the world saying, how did you do this? How did you pull that off? And what we've ended up with came out of a report that said to know and be known. I think this is a really simple but powerful mandate, is a simple but powerfully elegant system of identity elements that has stood us in very good stead around the world. There are all sorts of fascinating issues, which we won't get into, about what does it mean to have these kinds of symbols of state going into the future ahead of us. What does it mean to have, iconography in Second Life or virtual worlds, or all sorts of legal and identity issues ahead that are interesting and challenging. But more important, the fact that to know and be known everywhere. That's the power of iconography. It's the power of symbolism. So your charge as the designers of 2017 is to look ahead, not backwards, but be inspired by the people, the shoulders of the giants that we stand on. And this is the question: creative brief, design nation next. Thank you very much.